All right, so we've got about 2 minutes past 2 Eastern time here. Good afternoon. Good morning for those that are a little bit earlier in the day here. My name is Ainsley Keller, and I manage our sales and operations here at SK Global Software. We are so thankful for you all to make time today. We are kicking off a spring and summer webinar series that we are very excited about. So a lot of you will be getting future notifications about webinars in your future. And today we're going to cover AP automation. And so just on behalf of the SK Global team, we're really appreciative that you're making time out of your busy schedules today to be with us. If you don't know who SK Global Software is, we're just going to spend just a second kind of introducing ourselves, and then Tina Ash, who's one of our solution architects, is going to take the rest of our demo time today and talk through the Exflow AP automation solution. If you joined us and someone has forwarded this invite to you and you don't know who we are, SK Global Software is a global strategic ISV. We have been in the channel for many, many years, over 25 years, and we are focused strictly on the Microsoft Dynamics channel. So many of you are implementing Dynamics 365 for finance and operations, or you are considering an implementation, or maybe you're live and using the software for quite some time. And SK Global has been in the channel and has solutions ready on D365. That's the environment that we'll be demoing in today. We are known around the world for banking and treasury payments automation software. And today we're going to focus on the AP folks that are on the line. We're going to show you how to streamline your vendor invoice approval process. And today we're going to keep it short. We're about 30 or 40 minutes of time today. And then we'll send you an invite for future webinars where we'll be talking about different pieces of AP automation. And anybody that snuck into this session that's on the accounts receivable team will also be sharing webinars and future sessions on accounts receivable as well. We've got a lot to share during this spring and summer season while we kick off our webinar series. So we are recording this session today. So for those of you who are in attendance, we'll send the recording file to you so that you can share it with others. And if you have questions, we'll pop up a slide at the very end with an email address so that you can reach out to us if you have any inquiries after today's session. So that's enough talking from me. Tina, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and we'll take it away.
Thank you, Ainsley. So my name is Tina Ash. I'm a solution architect with SK Global. I joined SK Global about 2 years ago, where I implement Exflow and Treasury Automation Suite. And before that, I was an ERP consultant where I implemented D365 and prior to that, of course, AX 2012. So we do have a few slides to get in today, but most of it is going to be into the product. So let me go ahead and get started. Okay, so a couple things to note about Exflow. Exflow is completely built into the Dynamics D365 for Finance and Operations platform. So what that means is there's not going to be integration issues. You're not going to have synchronization delays, and you're going to have real-time insight into your AP processes and invoices. We'll also not violate any standard D365 functionality that you have configured, such as your account structures or your configured matching rules and tolerances. It is certified by Microsoft, so that means we have to adhere to Microsoft best practices. There are more than 30 million invoices being processed annually in Exflow across companies around the world. Exflow does have enhanced workflow, so your workflow can be based off a traditional workflow or a position hierarchy or a combination of the two. Exflow does have a dynamic approval chain, so if something in the coding is changed, the approval chain will be rerouted immediately. So for example, if you're doing approvals based off a department owner and the coding is changed to a different department from sales to marketing, for example, it will be rerouted to the correct department owner. Exflow does display the entire approval chain, so at any point in time you can see who has approved it and who has yet to approve your invoices. It does leverage all standard D365 logic, so the setup of the workflow looks and feels like standard D365. It is user-friendly on all modern mobile devices. So this is really for those people that are not day-to-day users of D365. Exflow will send an email every day and say, here's your invoices to approve. It'll include all invoices from that day, as well as any invoices that they haven't approved from prior days. There will be a link there to the portal, and they can click on that from either their computer, their phone, their tablet, and they will be able to view and approve invoices directly from there. Okay, so the process at a high level is you get invoices in some manner. Traditionally speaking, the most common that we run across are you're getting invoices emailed to you, as well as probably some paper invoices emailed to your office. So we will capture that invoice, or the ReadSoft Online or the OCR tool will capture that invoice. The invoice data will be interpreted, and then the invoice data is going to be sent as an XML, and the invoice is a PDF into D365 and Exflow. It is fully integrated with the purchasing module, inventory and logistics, accounts payable, finance, project accounting, and fixed assets. So any of those other sub-modules you're currently using today, Exflow does integrate with. If it matches all criteria and is within tolerances, it can go straight through to accounts payable for payment processing through Treasury Automation Suite. Okay. So that's the PowerPoints we have to go over. Sorry, I almost said spreadsheets there. And now let's go ahead and look at the OCR piece. So the OCR piece we're going to look at is ReadSoft Online. So you can see here, ReadSoft Online is an automated tool. There is a template per country that determines what information is needed for that country for your business. The templates are easy to maintain, so you can have items added or removed based on your business needs. And what happens is each time an invoice comes into ReadSoft, it'll create a vendor template specific to that vendor. We'll call it a vendor fingerprint. And the next time an invoice comes in for that vendor, it will remember where it got all that information from. You do have the ability to determine if you want to capture invoice header or invoice headers and invoice lines. So in ReadSoft Online, what you're dealing with mainly is going to be, once you've trained the OCR, it's going to be those new vendors you have in. Any exceptions, so let's say the vendor changes their invoice template or it's a bad scan. So it's not going to be every invoice stopping here. It's really just going to be those exceptions you're dealing with after you have trained the OCR initially. So I'm going to go ahead here and say start. Now, I'll show you right here under my supplier. If I say allow completed documents to bypass verification, after this initial time, next time it comes in, if it finds all the information for this vendor, it would not stop in ReadSoft Online. Okay. For purposes of demo, I always stop it because otherwise we'd really just be looking at a posted invoice. So I'm going to show you how we'll capture this information the first time. So ReadSoft will try to find some of it. I've cleared it all out just so we can see how to capture. My invoice number is here, my invoice date, PO number. If it's a purchase order invoice, that will be required to put the PO number from here. My phone number, that's how in my system I am finding my vendor. The test field, this is a field I added just so I can pick up additional information and bring it through to D365. So in this case, I'm going to use it to capture my requisitioner. So I can go ahead and capture that there. If you have a tax amount, you'll see sometimes you have to capture it a little bit better there. My total amount is going to be the total amount of the invoice. Okay, and by currency, generally in the US, people are not putting the currency on the invoices. So this is coming from my vendor. And delivery cost, I don't have any here, but if you're using charge codes on your purchase invoices in D365, this would be related to a charge code. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then there is going to be a batch job in D365 that is going to pick this invoice up, and we're going to see it over in D365. So let me just open D365 up. Okay, So as I said previously, Exflow is a module within D365. So you'll see here Exflow. There are batch jobs that you run, so you would determine the frequency at which invoices would come into the system. So my demo system, I have them coming in as every minute. I have that batch job running. In a live system, you'd run it less frequently. Some of our customers choose to run it, a couple times throughout the day, while others choose to run it just once or twice during the day. So they don't need the invoices necessarily to see them at all times. So under Exflow, import forms, import from all. So now this is where I am in accounts payable. My invoices have come in. Again, for purposes of automation, I should let you know that for purposes of demo, I have broken the automation. So this invoice technically did not have to stop here, but I have broken that automation in my system because otherwise we would now just be looking at a posted invoice. Okay. So you'll see over here on the right side, I do have my invoice image. Now, most of our customers actually choose not to show this here. So what they'll do instead is they'll hide side by side, and under general, they will show invoice. And using standard D365, you can pop that out in its own window, and they will put this image on one monitor or split screen it, and they'll put the D365 entry screen on their other monitor. So it kind of makes that invoice image or invoice entry a little bit faster. Okay, so I'll go ahead and click edit. Now for this one is a purchase order invoice. So purchase order invoices do get all of the main accounts and dimensions from the PO line. So from accounts payable perspective, I do not have to code in the main accounts or the dimensions. Those are getting picked up from the PO. So you'll see here I have my PO number here. It is using any matching rules and tolerances I have configured in D365. So in this purchase order, I have it three-way matching. So if my product receipt is done, you'll see my match results here are matched. Now, a lot of times you will receive the invoice prior to receiving the goods. So let's say the vendor is emailing you an invoice. You're obviously going to receive that before you receive the product. So then you will not have a product receipt. So Exflow has a parameter in there that will let you determine a number of days. So let's say for your business, normally it takes 5 days from shipment to receive that product in-house. So you can set that parameter to 5 days. And what's going to happen is over the next 5 days, it'll put this invoice, Exflow will put the invoice on hold, and there will be a batch job that runs that will try to match that invoice to a product receipt. If it does match, the match results will show as matched, and then it will push it out for approval if needed. If the approval evaluates and everything is within tolerances, it will go ahead and auto approve it and be posted for payment. So mine is already matched here. If I scroll over, here you'll see I am the approver. I don't necessarily have to be, but in my system, the way I have it set up is whoever enters the purchase order will be the person that will approve it if there's any issues that come up. So if it's outside of tolerances, it will come to me for approval. You'll see here, also on the far left side, my line type here is item. The line type, if it is a purchase order, will always be item or charges. Those are the two options. So even if you're using project accounting and it's going against a purchase order, this here will say item, or you can have charges. Now, we didn't have a charge fee mapped in there, but if we did, we would see a line here for that charge. Okay. Right, if everything looks good, now we'll see everything looks good here. Technically, I could have posted this instead of stopping it in accounts payable, but I did stop it here. So I'm going to go ahead and post it. Okay, it'll take just a second, hopefully. And while that's posted, oh, there we go. So what I want to show you next is under Documents from All. We're going to look for approved invoices. and I'm going to filter by that invoice number. I only remember the last couple digits, so I'm going to put 0513. So there's my invoice, documents from all. If I scroll to the right, I'll see that the invoice is approved. It does say that I approved it. I obviously didn't. The system evaluated it, and based on the conditions it found, it was able to auto approve. So it was system approved by Exflow. So that's the comment in there. So anytime you see that comment, you know, based on the criteria I have set up in my workflows and my tolerances, that it is able to approve it. Okay. Now, the one thing I want to show you guys is on that vendor account. So it hasn't technically posted. There's going to be a batch job that'll pick up to post that, to pick up for payment. But before that happens, I want to actually show you on the vendor account itself. Exflow is using Invoice Register. So especially in the US, this is something we don't use a lot, so I like to explain this. So if I come out here and I look at the Invoice Register, get my transactions, or not the Invoice Register, look at the vendor card and look at the transactions on that vendor. And I'm just going to filter again by that invoice number. Okay, so we'll see it is not yet approved. The reason that's not approved is because it's not yet posted. So even though it's technically approved, until that batch job runs that posts that invoice, it'll show here as unapproved. A user does not have to manually post these invoices. The batch job will run and it will post it. But the reason I like to show this piece is because, again, it's not super common in the US to use it, but if I look here on the vouchers, it's using that invoice register, and it is going to show, it is hitting that accounts payable and the offset account and the arrival account. The arrival account and the offset arrival. So that's the transactions. It's going to those two balance sheet accounts there. Now, when it posts, it's going to reverse that entry and post to the expense accounts. Same with cost invoices, or if this invoice was sent out for approval, you would still see it here. So let's say a user was required to approve this one, you would see it here. And as accounts payable, I could come up here and see Exflow. I can always see an image of the invoice, which is just going to pull up an image of that invoice. Or we can also see documents. So what the documents will show me is that screen we were just on. So it'll show me where it is in the approval chain. And now we know this one's fully approved. It is just waiting for that batch job to pick up and post it. But if it wasn't, it would say here, approvers. Instead of saying approved, it would say current. And then I would know as accounts payable, if the vendor is calling me asking, where's payment on this invoice, I would be able to see directly from the vendor transactions that the invoice has not yet been approved, and therefore we cannot yet pay it. Okay. So that is the purchase order process. The last thing I want to show you guys today is on the Exflow, the accrual. So we didn't look at cost invoices today because we are going to have a future session just on cost invoices. But the one thing I do want to show you and highlight on it is the accruals piece, because this is, as a former recovering accountant, this is one of my favorite parts about Exflow. So if I come into here and I look at Exflow, so these are going to be those invoices that we have sent out for approvals, but they're not yet approved and we need to close the month. So it's kind of late. Let's say it's we're closing April really late, but we're gonna pretend like we're closing April now. And we have some cost invoices out there that we've sent for approval that have not yet been approved. So we need to accrue for those costs in April. So let me go to Exflow, create my journal for accrual of estimated cost. So this is going to use a standard D365 reversing journal. Okay, so my dates are already in here. I'm going to include all invoices dated up through 4/30. I'm going to post those on the last day of the month and reverse it on the first day of the next month. Now, that is not necessarily what you have to do, but that is the most common. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And then it is going to create a general journal for me. We'll see here General Journal 406. It is not going to post it. It's going to be an unposted general journal, and I can make any changes I need to. So if I go into General Ledger, go to my journals, I'll see my journal 406 is here. It is marked as reversing journal with the reversing date I put in there of 5/1. So if it's marked on the header, every line is going to take that. And when this opens up, you will see here every single line has a debit or credit if there's any credit memos out there. Now this is one we'll get into in a future session because it's more with cost invoices and how some of these are blank. Obviously, I cannot post this journal right now. I have some extra work to do to be able to post that. But from the person creating the journal, I can come out here and see Exflow, show invoice, which would show me an image of the invoice, or documents. Again, that would show me where this invoice is in the approval chain, who has approved it and who has yet to approve it. Okay. If I scroll over, I will see the offset account here. This is coming from my Exflow parameters. So this is picking up that accrued purchases account from my Exflow parameters. And again, every line is marked as reversing with a reversing date in there. If I needed to add lines or delete lines, I could, and just go ahead from this form and be able to do that before I post it. So it's creating the journal for me as the accrual. It is just not posting it. And we'll stay in the GL for one more second. There's one last thing I want to show you guys for the accountants in the room. So you guys are probably all familiar with the fact that D365 and AX 2012 as well are all based off of vouchers, right? So everything posts to the GL based on a voucher. So I could run a trial balance report, but to make it a little faster, I'm going to get here from the audit trail. So as my accountants that sometimes need to look and see why something was, let's look at a voucher here. They have questions maybe on why this $8,000 was hitting this account. From here, they can see Exflow, and they can see the invoice, and they can also show the document. So either one of those they can see at any time. So from anywhere in the system that has that voucher, you can really look back at that invoice. Again, show invoice is just an image of the invoice, and documents is going to show you an image of the invoice if you have your side-by-side on. I apparently have mine hidden over here, but I can also show an image of the invoice here, or it's also going to show me where it is in the approval chain. Now, I just had one approver here, T. Ash. If somebody else was after me, Ainsley's name, for example, would be right after that. Okay, so I think we have some questions, right, Ainsley?
We sure do. Yep, we've got a bunch of questions coming in. I'm going to leave some time for a few. And then if you've submitted a question and we don't get to it, we have a record of those, and we will schedule calls or send out emails with answers, but we'll cover off on a few here. If you've thought of a question, you haven't sent it in, you can use the QA tool there at the bottom. One of the questions is around the OCR scanning. Is the OCR scanning something that they'd have to find separate from Exflow? So we can talk a little bit about this. So we don't require the OCR solution to be a certain product. You can bring one with you when you implement Exflow. The solution that our team is well-versed on and typically implements for our Exflow customers is called ReadSoft Online. It's owned by Kofax. But Tina, you can confirm, for the most part, as long as we can get the information into Exflow in the right format, then we don't really have a certain OCR solution that someone can use.
That is correct. So we don't enforce you to use any certain OCR. As long as we can get the data in the correct XML format, we'll be able to import that into Exflow and D365.
Sounds good. The next question is whether the approvers, invoice approvers, need to have a D365 license. So Yes, to comply with Microsoft's licensing rules, approvers do need a D365 license. My understanding is that the team license is all they need, or the smaller, less expensive license is all that Microsoft D365 user needs to be able to approve invoices. Am I hitting that right, Tina?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Omar asks a question about, it's a little general, but how to handle use tax scenarios.
Okay, so use tax, kind of give the consultant answer here is really it depends. But if you have that vendor set up that they are, and sales tax is set up that is use tax or the sales tax code of that vendor, it will come through in there and accrue it based on what you have calculated within your tax tables of D365 or AX. Now, if you don't, let me just come in here and look at this invoice really quickly. So mine is not use tax, mine's an actual sales tax. But if I had use tax out here, I could just change this to use. And I think I do here. So I can change that there. And then I don't have a tax calculation set up, but if you did, it would go ahead and put that to that account, your accrued tax account.
Okay, and then Esther asks us, if we have vendors that have discounts, where would we see that?
Yep, so you may have seen it in ReadSoft Online. There was a discount place here. Let me go back to this. Now this, some people do not want to capture discounts on ReadSoft Online because this would be capturing it from the vendor's invoice. Some people prefer to let the system calculate it. So meaning that they don't really want to trust their vendors to put the correct discount on there. So what they're going to do instead is just bring it over, and standard D365 at that point is going to show the discount in there on the header of it. So it will take any discounts that you have. So if you have net 2%, net 10, sorry, I said that backwards, on the vendor card, it is going to copy that from either the purchase order, obviously if you can override that on the PO, or if it's just on the vendor, it will copy that from over on the vendor.
Okay. How are the approvers being notified about invoices that they need to approve? How are they receiving invoices?
Yep, so once a day, there is an email that would go out that would be generated out of Exflow, and it would say, for example, Ainsley, here are your invoices to approve from today. It would also include any invoices she hasn't approved from prior days, right? So it would, assuming that there weren't any escalations or anything like that in there, it would include everything that's currently in her list to approve, and she would have a link to that portal that she would be able to approve. Exflow does have its own approval workspace, but we find that most of our customers that are not day-to-day users of Exflow, they're going through the portal. They're not using this workspace within D365.
Okay. I'm going to make time. We're right at 2:30, so I'm going to put one question in here. A bunch of other questions have come in, and like I said, if you asked a question and we haven't answered it, we will follow up with an email and get you an answer right away. Janice Reed, you're the lucky last question of the day. What kind of reporting and metrics are available? Are there any built-in reports?
So there's two types of built-in reports. Unfortunately, I don't have them set up right now. We will have a future session on reporting, but there's two types. They have Power BI embedded, so that Power BI embedded does not require a license, right? So it's going to be within your D365. You can run that Power BI report. The other ones are Power BI reports that are not embedded, so you have to have a Power BI license to run them. And we can get you guys some more information on that, but we are going to have a future session on reporting as well.
Okay, Tina, can you put up that last PowerPoint slide?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Thanks so much, T, for the time today. So we've gone through some questions. I think this is really great content, and like I said, we're recording this session, so all of you will get a copy of the recording. There are some of you that have posted questions, and we'll get you answers to those. If you walk away today and a question pops in your head and you would like to have a follow-up Q&A session for your team, or you have something specific to the way that your AP department handles things and you'd like us to have a private session with you, or you'd like a quote for the software that you've seen today, you can send an inquiry to sales@sksoft.com. As most of you know, we have a very strong partner channel, and most of the Microsoft partners in the ecosystem know us, so you can also contact your D365 partner. As Tina mentioned a few times, we have some sessions coming up to cover a lot of different pieces of AP automation. Like I said, if you snuck in here and you're on the AR team listening in, we'll have some topics and content for you as well. The SKG team has a lot of ideas, but we will be sending out a very short survey to collect some topics that you all would like to learn more about. So the SKG team over here, we've got a lot of ideas and topics that we think we could plan, but it's much better to give you content that you're asking for. So you'll get an email from me asking for what you'd like to see next in the spring and summer webinar series. If you didn't hear through the grapevine, next week we're about to release some discount promotions and things to customers who are existing customers of SK Global. And if you're on this session today as a partner or a prospective customer of SKG, you'll also be notified of some special promotions that will be released starting next week. So keep an eye out for things that are coming from us. If you have any questions, or like I said, you'd like to see a quote or a private Q&A session with Tina or someone else on our team, just send an email to sales@sksoft.com. And I think we're right at our time limit. So thank you everyone for joining today. Thanks Tina for your time, and thanks for your prep work setting this up for me.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Have a good day, everyone. Bye now.